Welcome to Her Palette with Assumpta Dickens, a talk show brought to you by Amoako Co. in collaboration with Amoako Radio. I'm thrilled to introduce Adiki, a visionary in the art world with a background in visual art and psychology. Adiki has over a decade experience from Lubbock to New York City, Cape Town, and Accra. As a founding team member of Gallery 1957 and core development team member of dot.ateliers, Adiki pushes the boundaries of process optimization as well as artistic collaboration, driving the evolution of artistic creative ecosystems on the African continent. Last summer, Adiki managed the launch of Lagos' very own Alára's pop-up shop at the Brooklyn Museum and co-curated the exhibition titled Left Hanging, One Sculpture, One Rug, and Paintings, a presentation of selected works from the Boafo collection at dot.ateliers. Adiki is currently pursuing a graduate degree in creative business leadership at SCAD. Welcome, Adiki.
Thank you, Assumpta.
I'm so excited to have you on my show. Thank you so much for making the time and for being here today. So yeah, we're just gonna get into it. It's
Thanks
gonna
for
be
the
a
invitation.
very calm session. And yeah, let's do it. So Adiki, can you share a bit about your journey as a facilitator and how you've navigated the art world?
My journey as a facilitator, like many women within the space, I think is quite diverse. I moved back to Ghana in 2013, I believe it was, 2013, 2014. And I happened to meet someone at dinner who was doing effectively like a feasibility study for Gallery 1957. And I offered my assistance, and next thing I knew, I was part of the founding team at Gallery 1957. And this was in 2015, 2016. Worked there for a while, took a break, did consulting work outside of the art space, but forever remained connected to it. Kept looking and observing problems, pitfalls, growth, just enjoying and supporting from a distance. And then in 2020, made the decision to be intentional about my return to the space. Moved to South Africa, actually. Worked with the Southern Guild Gallery for a period of time. Came to another reflective, pivotal moment where there seems to be a lot happening in Accra, and it's why am I lending my knowledge and services elsewhere. And then made the decision to come back home, and now I am with dot.ateliers.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's such a beautiful journey. So how would you describe your role in the space?
I think there's so much that gets done. On the front end within the space, everybody sees the exhibitions, they see the beautiful works, they see the artists. But there's a lot of behind the scenes work that also happens. So I tend to describe the things that I do as just simply facilitating and helping things along. You know, if you need to review and make sure something is being hung correctly, you know, then you're curating or organizing to have a shoot done, or organizing press or comms, or there's just so much that goes on that I feel the best description would be facilitating and just.
So yeah, I wanted to, you spoke about seeing the amazing things happening in Accra, and that sort of segues into if you're able to share some insights on the current state of the art scene in Accra and how it's evolved over the years. You mentioned stepping back, stepping out, stepping in. So it's like so much of it has evolved, particularly in terms of representation and the role of women as well.
On that front, the space in Ghana specifically and across the continent, it's just over the last 10 years, it has grown so much. In what was it? 2015, 2016. Before that, there was Nubuki Foundation, Artist Alliance, I believe Tiger Art Gallery, Burge. And even then, they weren't in the mainstream. You had to actively look them out to find out what was going on. And then there was the Day Center as well. But from that, there's been this, I feel like in 2016, there was this explosion with a shift in people paying attention with, what was it, Charlie Wate happening, and then the Gallery 1957 press tour. Then through that, you have lots of artists that became a bit more intentional with not simply creating work, but ensuring that the work that they were creating was giving back to the spaces that informed their narratives. So you have Serge doing like LA 360, Amoako Boafo is doing dot.ateliers, you have Kwesi Boche who's doing World Phase. Then you have people like Paul, who've set up Dikan, which is catering to another subset within the creative industry, like with photography. You have Joseph with Noldor. So there are lots of things popping up, and then you end up with people like Adora, first female gallerist.
Can you say that again?
First female. Taking it away from what historically, at least as we've experienced, has been a fairly male-dominated space. One thing I do love is when you look at a lot of the facilitators in the space, they're women. And I think part of the growth that we have seen is that nurturing energy that we keep putting back into it. And that's gotten it to where it is. So you also have people like Rita, she's with Sihine and what she was doing, and now her own creative practice that she's brought forward. It's just taking the space in leaps and bounds. I do feel that there are other areas within the ecosystem that could benefit from further development. More exhibition spaces, So I feel like galleries cater to the commercial component of it, but to have a very nicely rounded, healthy system, you do want artists to be able to experiment freely without necessarily having a commercial outcome or goal for the works that they're creating. So sometimes you simply want to be able to bring forth the work and share it and continue to develop your narrative and your practice that way. I don't think there are too many spaces that fully facilitate that at the moment. And it would be great to have more of those. The other thing that I think we would benefit from would be creative forums like this one, where you're able to have a conversation and we're not siloed. I think that would be one of the other elements, because things are very segmented. Everyone's in their little corner, trudging along, doing good work. But I think the work would be better amplified and benefit everyone else if we're a bit more integrated and talking to each other. And women do that. I actually read this interesting article about how what we describe now as gossiping, which is considered a bad thing, was actually a good thing. Because
Right.
you had women who would sit and talk and exchange information and would protect themselves from each other. It's like, okay, no, this dude does this and doesn't do that. And I heard my husband saying this and this about this business. And then that's how we shared and engaged and had information. But men demonized it, and now gossiping has become this bad thing. So I feel like, let's bring it back.
That's amazing.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's beautiful. What specific challenges have you faced as a facilitator in this space? But I do want to segue that into emerging women artists. But let's start with you, like just being in the space.
I think personally, and I don't know how much of this is the space and how much of it might be just me internalizing and in my head. We all deal with imposter syndrome. But being taken seriously. I find that sometimes a woman might say something and a male counterpart would echo it, and it would be better received when it was coming from another man. It might just be with the delivery or, whatever. And then being more than a face, like just having people hear what you're saying and not just looking at you. I am more than this person. I am an intellect. I am a personality. I have a persona. There's a soul, and it's not just the visual. I had a horror story. I had a situation where somebody who I was looking to sell work to walks into a space, and then instead of paying attention to the works and what I was saying about the work, spent half of the time talking about how he wanted to buy me diamond earrings and was trying to get me to twirl. And I'm like, can we? This is why we're here. And that would be, yeah. It's difficult. Finding that balance between being heard and having people take you seriously and just not seeing you as a body.
And how have you navigated some of those challenges?
Sometimes successfully, honestly, sometimes unsuccessfully. In starting out, in my head, I would be screaming, but then I would playfully slap her wrist and be like, stop that, don't do that. And then other times, as I came into my own or matured and grew a bit more of a thick skin, I would draw hard lines. And there are sales which I know I haven't completed simply because I wouldn't tolerate the way in which someone was engaging with me. And you just cut them off.
That's interesting. And you would say that has helped, just asserting firm boundaries.
Firm boundaries, and I think personally, stepping away from situations before they turn into something. So, for instance, I started coming up with little rules. I don't do dinners. I only do breakfast and lunch. If I need to meet with anybody, I won't have dinner with you. So you're not confused. We're having breakfast, we're having lunch. Mm-hmm. And then just ensuring that in my interactions with them, there isn't any confusion. Like, remain demure, keep everything professional, and not try and get too personal, which is difficult because the creative space specifically is very, very relational. It's built on relationships. So finding the fine line between being able to fully nurture a relationship with an individual where they're able to trust the advice that you're giving them, the suggestions that you're making because you understand them and have taken interest in them and you've gotten to know them. But for trying to keep that balance to where it doesn't go overboard and then it becomes too personal or lines get blurred.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that tip with us. I'm really glad that you've been able to navigate the entire situation in a way that benefits you and has also led you to be able to assert yourself more within the space. Speaking about emerging women artists, let's delve a bit into emerging women artists as it's also a space I work in as well. What has been your experience in that space? Hearing you speak about just the Accra art scene in general, I can hear how a lot of the names you mentioned are men, right? And then there's Adora, her being the first gallerist and a woman. What is the landscape for artists as well, not just facilitators? Mm-hmm. Like the artists that we have here, the emerging artists, and how's that been received as well?
There's so many women artists that we get to spend time with just by purview of being within the space. Patrick Bewong is someone that I met very early on. Her practice it's dynamic. She would use found object rubbers and create these beautiful tapestries that almost look like fabric or kente, woven kente. And then very recently, I saw her doing a performance. So that just shows you the breadth of the quality and variety that her practice offers. You have someone like Christelle Yayora Anthony, who is a self-taught visual artist. You have Millicent or Aquile Rico, who's working with leather and discarded leather bags, touching on consumerism and repurposing works. You have Louise, I believe, Aqua. She is from KNUST. She's another artist that I met really early on. She gets so immersed in creating these patterns, and then she's taking that further, and now she's creating installations with her work. I feel like it's, for women artists, there are two components to it. There is the societal expectation of having to do certain things that sometimes can affect a female artist's ability to be tunnel visioned and focus on, being able to fully commit to a practice minus the pressures and being able to do the things that, your family feels that you're able to do, which I feel sometimes men artists, it's a bit easier. A guy is happy to go to a shack somewhere. His parents won't necessarily worry about him. A female artist might be prepared to do the same thing, but it's like, where are you going? Where are you staying with? Come home. It's 10 o'clock. Why aren't you home yet? There's just the general home feel of it. And then also, like I said to you, I do think that we need more environments where we're all sitting and engaging. We might need to be a bit more intentional about creating space for female artists, understanding some of these issues that they're dealing with. I think it's Go Artist Girl. It's a platform that's dedicated specifically to visual artists, highlighting, ensuring that they're documenting and they're being able to contribute to artistic canon across the world. Because female artists in general, it's not a uniquely Ghanaian or African problem. It is a global problem. Women artists have, there's a level of erasure that they deal with in art history. You have artists like Tracy Emin who are dealing and looking to fix that problem and lay claim and claim space to ensure that their impact and their narratives are being felt. In recent years, that's changing. So you have more established artists that are getting, like you have someone like Zoro Opoku, who's getting the visibility. Her narrative is being heard just as well, or well received, just as the other male artists. To the question of what we could do more to be able to offer support for some of these female artists is addressing some of these little issues. So for instance, maybe a female focused residency, So whenever her parents ask, where are you? I'm here. The resident understanding what an African's parents' concerns are can speak to that. They're comfortable, they're supporting. Creating a space where women feel that they can go, have their stories be heard, and then they're not necessarily competing with their male counterparts. And I know that there are several other institutions who are in the process of working towards providing fellowships and opportunities that are women-focused, she-focused, just so that we can create and support and get them to the fore and receiving the attention that they deserve.
That's amazing. So let's talk a bit about probably what every artist would want to know. But I feel like we can't speak about, artists and artistic practice and not necessarily speak more generally about the market, the state of the market, and also the collector culture here in Accra. I can share my opinion and thoughts on that with you. As you said, Accra has become this vibrant hub of just art and expression and different mediums and really beautiful space of becoming for a lot of artists as well. And there's been a lot of global interest. But we will be remiss not to talk about the current state of the market, which is not really great. But there is still a budding collecting culture here. And it's just in the space of, what are we thinking? collecting wise? What is that thought process around owning a piece of art? How is that being like received by young and budding collectors, or even just art enthusiasts who just want a piece every now and then?
Yeah.
Right. And how are we also preserving that culture as well? Yeah, we can speak on that.
When it comes to collector culture, I do think that we've come a long way from collectors that at least I was engaging with earlier. I feel like there are definitely lots more within the market. But I do think that they're important to the larger ecosystem. Currently, and this is the case with most emerging markets, the US and the UK are the largest consumers of art. Whenever, let's just say about 95% of your sales might be coming from the West, in a sense, that does almost dictate to an extent how you're presenting the work, right? Because you want the market to be able to understand, which goes back to what I was saying about creating space for artists to just create without necessarily a commercial intent in mind. With that said, with the local collectors that we have, it's very important that we have data. So in most of the conversations that I have with emerging collectors or people who are thinking about it, I'm like, first and foremost, you really need to love the work that you're buying. I view it almost as a marriage. Like, you're going to be stuck with that for a while. You're going to be looking at it every day if you have it in your house.
Yeah.
So that needs to be the first place if you're looking to collect. Then there's also, and it's not something that you need to start out or know immediately. As you collect and as you grow and get a sense of what your sensibility is and the various works that inform your collecting style. So you might have somebody who would be very intentional about collecting female artists. That would be one way, patronage to support and further develop the emerging artists that we have here within the market. Then I'm actually working on a project which is researching, trying to understand what our collection management culture is currently. And throughout, what I found is that data is limited in a sense. So you'll have, Art Basel puts out a report annually about the art market. And I believe it was in the 2021 or the 2022 report, it actually said that there isn't information on Africa specifically, mainly because there isn't enough data for them to pull from. Now, if we're a bit more intentional about the way we're managing the collection, so these are the number of pieces, this is how many works, this is what the works were valued at when they were collected, not only are we taking control of canon and archiving and ensuring that you, for instance, if there's an artist that you want to ensure that people remember, the works you believe that the work is important and the narrative that that work is speaking to needs to be remembered and further down the line contribute to African art history, that's the only way to go about doing that. And then if you're being intentional about it, then you're able to track and see that artist's visual growth, then also their valuation. How has their works pricing-wise developed over time? And all of this data goes back into reinforcing how we can shift and ensure that our market is sustainable. That assuming the West decides to shift focus and then they have another more interesting buzz market, that our market will not buckle and will continue to sustain.
That's amazing. That's brilliant. And then just to add a bit more to that, as someone who also works in the space as well, we definitely have a budding collector culture here. Cannot be compared to Lagos, unfortunately.
What can be compared to Lagos? Please.
Just because of the volume, right? And the scale.
The numbers.
Yeah, and it's been so beautiful to see Accra sort of catch up just in the space of us coming together as artists, practitioners, facilitators in the space, and also just introducing the value in just also investing in your own art, in your own country. Mm-hmm. And I see that has also begun with simply creating some form of awareness, right? It's like having activations around the space of just discussing what is the benefit. And then even more so, encouraging more women to collect art.
Yeah.
You know, if we were to look at the statistics in the West, we know that majority of them is not women. I'm not going to specify the majority, but we all know, right? Ideally, and we would love to see more and more women, collect art and just be at the epicenter of operations, whether as artists, as thinkers, as shapers, and yeah, hopefully just having more conversations around this, and then also the data preservation of it as well. That would sort of, because I see how that will strategically shift things for us globally. It's like having some kind of institution through data, right?
And then internally as well, like whenever I've had conversations with friends who I believe would benefit from starting to collect, they always go back to valuation. Because certain people, what I have realized is locally, collectors they're very numbers driven. They want to see value. It's not abstract or intrinsic value. They want to see monetary value and what the return would be. We don't want to develop a space that has flippers. You basically buy and you sell a work because you want a return on investment. That's not what we want to do. You want consistent, long-lasting collecting that's actually contributing to our larger historical narrative when it comes to art.
Yeah.
Then being able to have, so one thing I did particularly appreciate about SA was, for instance, you have the BMW Young Collectors Initiative, right? And it goes back to what you were talking about, where there are educational conversations happening. There is an introduction to collector culture. There are events happening. You're engaging, you're meeting artists, you're being introduced to works. And then that is also how you grow the collector base. So that might be something that we should explore.
Yeah. But as you said, there's also the need to emphasize the art of creating, not primarily for the purpose of commercialization.
Yes.
And as we've seen in the space, art is a practice. It takes quite a bit of time. There's going to be peaks of it.
Yes.
Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes you're somewhere just right in the middle. But again, it's a journey, and you should be able to embrace where you find yourself at every point in your life as well. But then one thing you'll always come back to is just you enjoying that art of just creating for the mere sake of
creating.
Just creating, That is
important.
Awesome. So now, in your experience, what initiatives or strategies can be implemented to promote and empower more women in the Ghanaian art world, both locally and on a global scale?
I think at the core of it, we need to be less siloed.
Less what?
Siloed. I believe that there are lots of great initiatives that are happening. But those initiatives, there needs to be crossover. We need to build bridges. So we're filling in the gaps. So I might have a strength, so for instance, potentially dot.ateliers has space, right? And then you have another person who might need a space to be able to host a female-focused event. Let's talk, let's meet halfway, let's collaborate. So not trying to figure things out on our own, engaging with each other and seeing where we can support and provide for each other. And then also having intentional programming that is female-centered, creating safe spaces around wellness. And it's not self-worth, but just being okay in what you're making and knowing that it's a journey. Because sometimes I feel like you have somebody who you might have artists who might be female artists who might be a bit too self-critical, and then the works will never see the light of day just because they're being self-critical and they feel everyone else is going to be self-critical. So potentially just creating a safe space where maybe you can have an artist present their work anonymously and just be able to get feedback and that encouragement to push and do more.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Adiki. I just want to call us to do like a little exercise, right? If you were to like just close your eyes and then visualize, say, Accra, the art scene, say 20 years, 50 years from now, what are you seeing? What comes up for you just in the space of also just women and more representation? What are you visualizing?
You're seeing female artist collectives, more female-led gallery spaces.
Okay.
Potentially, hopefully, governmental collections with a female focus. Whoever wins, please. And then just funding and grant opportunities that are available for women to explore, develop, without the everyday concerns of meeting their needs and having a roof over their heads.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as the, team member at dot.ateliers, are there any opportunities that exist for emerging women artists, just to round this up?
Like apply for the residency. Hopefully we'll see you there. We are exploring talk programs as well. So if you have an idea for any sort of pitch or conversation that you're looking to have, please send us an email, info@dot.ateliers.space. Let us know what ideas that you have, and if there's room within the calendar, we can do something this year, if not next year. But one of the main things, our core prompts, is community engagement and just creating a space for cross-generational engagement. And then we can include the gender component to it, creating a safe space for women to be able to speak within our community. So
sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for
Adiki.
having me.
I'm so excited. The conversation was so insightful. I'm really glad that you're putting yourself out there more this year.
Let's see how long it lasts.
Oh, it's gonna last. It's gonna last. I feel like you've been very intentional about it. So it makes me very happy for you. But yes, thank you for contributing to this awesome conversation, sharing such wonderful insights, and your experience, as a facilitator in this space. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. And caveat, if I said anything to offend, I apologize.